listening to the Chase Merrill podcast.
Outside of breathing just to stay alive, why is it important to do other things to be able to manipulate and control your breath outside of just the default setting?
Well, most people's default setting is corrupted already. And it started in kindergarten, at least in America, when you're forced to sit down for 6, 7, 8 hours, you will never take a deep breath again because it's an unnatural pattern. Sitting in a chair is an unnatural pattern. Indigenous tribes don't sit like that. They sit on the ground and they use positions like seiza and stuff like that. And they're able to keep their belly loose. They're not sitting like this.
Mhm.
So from what I've seen, and I've worked with, I've been doing this 8 years. I'd probably say worked with about 800 people already, about 100 a year. And I've only met 2 good breathers. So to me, the world has a breathing disorder. And especially after the scamdemic, we don't have to go into that, but they, really hurt people on purpose, and it really damaged the olfactory nerve. But breathing is an action of the spine, but it begins in the brainstem. It's not like when I'm defaulting to what the energy of my cranial nerves are allowing me to breathe at. So if I've ever been hit in the head, and I've had 4 concussions and countless bangs to the head because I wrestled for 30 years. I was getting micro concussions every day. Every time you bang your head, it's a micro concussion. It doesn't matter if the doctor tells you you're concussed or not.
Mm-hmm.
You get slapped in the face, it's a micro concussion. And then every time your brain experiences trauma, it throws a circuit, like in your house, right? The circuit breaker goes, otherwise the house would fry and it would burn down. So the circuit breaker blows. So the same thing. You get hit in the head, the circuit breaks, and then the energy can't go through the normal outlet. So it has to figure out a way around. And everyone would say, well, the brain is got tons of capacity. We're not even using as much as we should. No, we're actually using 100% of our brain. We just might not be using it the way we should be using it because of the trauma that we've experienced. And that trauma can start at the age of 5. If a 5-year-old has never had any physical or emotional trauma from their parents, they're going to get it when they start to sit in school. That sitting is trauma to the spine. So,
Okay. So out of these 800 plus people that you've worked with and only meeting 2 good breathers, what separated them from everybody else?
So Joy, I don't know if you've ever seen, I have shirts that say superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't make them for me because at the time I was not superhuman. I honestly believe that of the 800 people, I was the worst of all of them.
Really?
I only have 1 student here in New York who was as bad as I was. Everybody else wasn't nearly as bad as me. But the thing that set them apart was Joy, who I coined that shirt after, superhuman. She's about my age. I'm 55, or God, I'm going to be 56 in July. So she's a little bit younger than me, and she's been a raw foodist for 30 years. So she doesn't have congestion in her body. So her nose is open all the time. Because she doesn't eat dairy, eggs, or meats. So she's not congested. So she was able to breathe at a good rate already. She was an aerialist, a contortionist, meaning she had full flexibility in her spine like a gymnast. So that means it doesn't necessarily mean there's not tension in the system, because an athlete can have a lot of tension even if they're flexible, because flexibility has nothing to do with tension. But she'd also been a diver and a yogi. So she had practiced the Eastern arts for 30 years and then went into aerialist and contortionist. But it wasn't until she started working with me that she said, wow, I've never experienced such incredible gains in my ability to move than when I started to work with you and work on breathing. But she started at a level that I had never seen before. But that was at the beginning of COVID, because I immediately, when they said they were going to flatten the curve, I knew it was a lie. So I immediately said I have to start a breathing course online, and I hadn't been teaching breathing online at all. So within 4 days, my wife already had a website made for me with Stripe and all that. And I was able to start marketing myself on Instagram just to get people to join. And she was in my first class. She said, I always been waiting for an opportunity. So my first person in my first class, there was about, I think there were 8 of them, was where I met the breather who's been the best.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of shocking, actually.
Absolutely.
And then she took it to levels. Because I'm a master instructor of the Oxygen Advantage, and I wasn't teaching the Lois Laney brain activations back then, because I didn't know them well enough. And she took it to a level that made her superhuman. She literally was able to hold her breath for over 9 minutes, which she would be world champion, but the level that she's at, she's got no desire for accolades.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very grounded and centered human being. So that stuff doesn't mean anything to her. She did it for her own personal power and then to be able to help women because she coaches women. Um, and then the other young man was Canadian. He was only 20 and he was a hockey player. And what set him apart was he was just a very calm individual. And I said, geez, Andrew, you're so calm. And he said, I've been pretty calm my whole life. I said, how was your upbringing? He said, spectacular. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah. He's like, I have an amazing relationship with my parents. I love them. I can't think of any traumas I had except for the fact that I do play hockey, but I didn't, he wasn't at that high level where he was getting concussed.
Mm.
So at that moment in time, he was breathing great. That was 3 years ago, and I haven't talked to him since. It was actually only a initial consultation that we did, and I was shocked, but he didn't have the finances to be able to work with me personally. But
So those are your two good breathers. Now, everybody else is on scales of bad to terrible, I'm sure. But what does that look like? Like, I feel like I'm a good breather, right? I've been doing it since I came out of the womb. I feel like I'm a good breather. So what does it mean to be bad?
right, well, people think, well, I can run. I don't need to be taught how to run. But then you watch them run and you go, oh, wow.
True.
They're actually, their patterning is very poor.
Mm-hmm.
So same thing with breathing. You might want to believe that you're breathing well, and I want to believe that you're breathing well as well. And what I noticed so far is that when you're breathing and I'm talking, you're not opening your mouth. And a lot of people are mouth breathing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they're relaxed in a position like this, they might be mouth breathing, but as soon as they're not focused anymore, you see their default come and the mouth drops open.
Mm.
So a poor breather would be somebody that needs to open their mouth at rest. And if you exercise with your mouth open, you're a poor breather too, because your system thinks you're in fight or flight. There is nothing good about mouth breathing. Absolutely nothing, zero. Everybody who teaches breathe in your nose, exhale through your mouth. And there are a lot of breathing instructors now.
Mm.
And in my opinion, if you teach somebody to breathe through their mouth, you should not be a breathing instructor.
I've read the book Breath. Was it James? Is it James
Nestor.
Nestor? Yeah, I've read it. Great book. Very good book. And what you just said now reminded me of that. Like he talks about in the book, he does a test where he and his friend, they do like only breathing through their mouth for several days while exercising, and then only breathing through their nose for several days, including while exercising. And I've done that. Like back when I was competing in sport, like I would have sessions where it was like nasal breathing only. I'd legitimately put like tape over my mouth and I'd be on the rower, I'd be something, and I'd learn my pace. And like the first 10 minutes or so, you're like panicking because like you're rowing, and then you start to relax and it becomes easier to breathe. And so I've experienced that firsthand. However, my argument would be like, could you maintain that nose breathing even to the highest end of the sport? So like if you're actually going to like VO2 max or competing at that level, like there has to be some give, right? Because we're going into the sport, which the highest end of sport is already not healthy. Like we're competing, we're athletes, so we're already not healthy. So is it like, okay, we're making that conscious decision to not be healthy in the sport? Or do you think it can be achieved like nasally? Just give me one quick moment, then we'll be right back to the episode. If you are enjoying the show, go ahead and give me a follow or subscribe wherever you are listening. It helps way more than you'd think. And if you wouldn't mind leaving a rating or a review, that helps new people find the show as well. And if you have any questions or comments or recommendations for guests, go ahead and reach out to me at Chase C. Merrill on Instagram or leave a comment right here on Spotify. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get back to the episode.
Well, there's a UFC fighter. His name is Israel Adesanya, and he was the middleweight champion for years. And in the 2 fights before he lost the title, Joe Rogan was commenting in the fights, like during the rounds, he wasn't sitting down like George Foreman, and he never opened his mouth to breathe. We're talking about a middleweight title fight in probably the hardest sport you can play because there's nothing but trauma, and he never opened his mouth. Now, he trains with a guy named, a paramedic in New Zealand, and the guy knows what he's doing. He knows how to train his nervous system so that he doesn't get into that state that you're talking about where it's overwhelming to his system that he would have to default to mouth breathing. Okay. So we do have a pure example of mouth breathing, of nasal breathing through a very aggressive sport that can be done. And if you think about a chase between a cheetah and an antelope, neither animal is opening their mouth when they're running away or running after each other. It isn't until they stop where they do open their mouth, and that's to pant. It's not to breathe, it's to pant, to off gas the accumulation of the lactate that's accumulated in the blood. And then you watch them, they don't move, they stand, then they sit, they're still breathing. Then all of a sudden they lay down. I'm actually a big fan of cheetah pages on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I'll look at how the animals are breathing, and they lay down, and then all of a sudden their mouth just closes. And then they go back to recovery. And recovery is through breathing. Recovery isn't through panting. That's off gassing the accumulation of the lactate. So I train a lot of world-class athletes, and I tell them that if you need to open your mouth during your event, do what you need to do. But ideally, I would like to be able to coach somebody to the point where they don't need to breathe through their mouth. Now, I have a world-class swimmer right now. He's actually, today's Monday, the South African National Championships start tomorrow, and I've been working with him for 4 months. Now, he has to breathe through his mouth because he's a swimmer. And swimmers are better breathers than all the other athletes because it is controlled breathing. Right? They have to control their breath. So they generally are breathing better than other athletes that are land athletes. But what he noticed was that he said, I would inhale, I would exhale. And then as I was coming back up for another gasp of air, I didn't exhale enough. I didn't have the ability to exhale. I would actually, as soon as my mouth came out of the water, I would still be breathing out and then gasp air back in. Well, the gasping is a fight or flight response, because if I get hit in the face, or if I see something on the street, I go, the mouth opens, the body gasps. That's the startle response. So now he's like, when he told me this was 2 months ago, he corrected this in 2 months. He's like, Bryan, now I can breathe all the way through my exhale. And then when I come up, I'm going through my nose, and then I'm breathing out through my mouth. So he's been able to perfect that in the pool. And he does all the strokes. He does the medley, and his big stroke is the freestyle. And he took 14th in the Olympics, but only by 2 seconds.
Yeah.
He missed gold by 2 seconds, and he took 14th.
That's amazing.
3 weeks ago, he broke his fastest 200-meter freestyle, and he hadn't touched it. He's only 21, and he hadn't been close to it in 2 years. And he just broke it in practice after only 3.5 months of learning to command his breathing. So I say learning to command his breathing, but my approach is a brainstem approach first, because everything that happens in human beings needs the energy of the cranial nerves to be able to communicate. And there's 12 of them, and each one has a pair. So there's 24 really, and they talk to each other. So 12 here, 12 here, and they talk to each other. And when they talk to each other, that's called functional possibilities. And there's 93 functional possibilities, which give us a septillion amount of neural connections and ability to be superhuman. So I prioritize brainstem health, which restores natural function, whatever natural function you want to call, respiration, excretion, digestion, lymphatics. It's all going to be improved if those cranial nerves have a higher baseline. So if you have 23 of them and they're at 100%, but only one of them, let's say the right side of the vagus nerve, is at 50, guess how fast your brain functions? 50. You're only as strong as your slowest cranial nerve. And at any time you get hit in the head, you're lessening the energy because circuits are breaking.
What are you meaning by energy?
So you're an electromagnetic being.
Okay.
So everything is energy. Nothing is physical. It's all energy related. So even if you get hurt, it's an emotional response generally from the subconscious. People would say, well, no, I fell off my bike and I hurt my elbow. Well, in a subconscious kind of way, the universe is very finicky and crazy this way. It'll call your attention to your elbow by making you fall on it. And there's messages in all of our emotional pain. There's always messages that the universe is trying to give to you. Maybe you shouldn't have been biking as fast as you were going. Maybe you should have been paying attention to the road instead of thinking about your depressive girlfriend that broke up with you. Now I'm just, throwing these things out there because remember the septillion possibilities. So we can look at it that's how I look at it now, because I'm into quantum neurology. I'm into all of these things where we work on energy of the brain, because the future of medicine will be electroceutical, and that will be energy healing. And then once you reestablish the connections, which is not easy the older you are. For Matthew, my swimmer, it's happened fast. He's another one. He was not a very good breather when we started. Better than most of my land athletes, but not very good. And now he's almost, I'm not going to say epic, because we have this one benchmark that's called the Bolt score. So I'm an oxygen advantage master instructor, and I'm a Lois Laney restorative breathing coach. So my Lois Laney teachings are from the brain perspective, and then the oxygen advantage teachings are from the physiological motor perspective of breathing mechanics.
Okay.
So Matthew is now at a level where the Bolt score, you're supposed to be able, we can even try this right now.
Sure.
Even before I tell you about what it is.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And everybody else out there in Chase Merrill podcast world can do it with us. So it's a simple test, but it's nuanced, and it feels, most people go, what? It's so simple, but it's so hard to feel because no one's ever been asked to feel their breath before, right? No coach has ever told you to focus on your breathing, ever. That's going to change. It's already changing, but we're still at the precipice of it. So the test is very simple. We're going to interlock our hands, our fingers, and we're going to keep our pointer fingers straight. We're going to make sure that our head stays straight. So when we go to hold our breath, we don't bring our head to our nose. We bring our fingers up to our nose so our spine stays tall.
Okay.
So we want to sit up nice and tall. Now, before you start, the assessment is like this. Right now, you're breathing normally. Right? You haven't altered your breath. So I want you to continue to breathe normally. So while you have your fingers engaged, right here, just breathe normally. Now notice when you breathe out, you breathe in again, or you might pause. If you're breathing really well, then when you exhale, you don't need to breathe in again. And a good breather would always have a pause at the end of the exhale if they were safe, because that's what it comes down to. Does the brain feel safe? So when you go to do the test, you breathe in, you breathe out. When you breathe out to the normal end of your exhale. We don't push any air. That wouldn't be normal if we try to force air out. So we're going to take like 4 or 5 breaths. We're going to see what the normal inhale and exhale are. And at the end of the passive exhale, where you feel that you've breathed out your breath to a passive level, you're going to plug your nose. And when you plug your nose, that's going to stop you from breathing. We don't pinch because of trigeminal nerve number 5. And everyone pinches. That brings on the breath hold faster. So we're going to plug. And if you think it's gross out there, you can go and buy an Olbus, and you could take the Olbus and put 2 in your nose and stop yourself from breathing. But don't worry about germs, because the air in your body is sterilizing. Your nose has the ability to sterilize air before it comes in your body. So one more time, everybody. We're going to breathe in and we're going to breathe out. I'll try to make a noise even. So I'm going to breathe in.
And then real quick, when we plug our nose, are we just holding it as long as we can? Is that the goal?
No.
Okay.
I didn't get to that yet.
Okay.
So as you breathe out to your passive exhale, you plug your nose. Now, this prevents you from taking in another breath, but you should be calm, right? You breathed out, you plug your nose. Now you're going to wait till you feel the first definitive sign that you need to breathe. Now, it's a subtle sign. It's not like you're waiting to feel, okay, I need to breathe. That means you did it too long. This is the way I think my analogy. This is a seesaw, a teeter-totter. In the middle is pH balance. Over here is carbon dioxide. Over here is oxygen. So your brain is always trying to balance CO2 and O2. And in the middle is pH neutral. So when you pause and you plug your nose, the first definitive sign to breathe would be that the carbon dioxide has just created, or actually it would be, it's increasing. So it would be increasing and oxygen would be going down. So as soon as you feel that, maybe this tiny burning sensation, not a convulsion and not a throat swallow, that would mean you've gone too far, but it's more like a little tiny burning sensation. Now, when you feel that burning sensation and you let go, your breath should return to normal. So when you let go, if you go and you hear it or you feel yourself breathe in fast, you were holding your breath and you didn't even know it. And most people are holding their breath and they don't even know it. A lot of people tell me that. So you breathe in, you breathe out, you plug. You feel the first sensation and you let go. And you should say, I think I could have went longer. But that meant you did the test correctly, because everybody wants to feel it. But this test is to just feel the very beginning of it and then let go. And then your brain should say, oh, I think I could have went longer. But that meant you did the test correctly.
Okay.
So I'm going to get out my phone and I'm going to get my timer out. And we're going to let your brainstem choose when you would like to go. So when you plug your nose, and Chase, close your eyes, because it's a feeling that you're feeling, not if your eyes are open, your brain's processing information. So ladies and gentlemen, when he plugs his nose, I'm going to start the timer. And he's going to keep his eyes closed. Keep your head straight. Okay, so you hear that deep inhale? So you are holding a little too long because you had to breathe, right? You felt, I need to breathe.
Yeah.
So you went 12.5. Now, in the science world, they do all these science tests. What that tells me is that you're not able to regulate pressure effectively. So baseline breathing is 1 minute. We should be able to pause our breath at the end of an exhale and not feel any need to breathe for 1 minute. right? Now, don't get nervous,
Yeah.
but anything under 15 is considered critical.
Okay.
But critical could last for 40 years
Yeah.
because people don't think they need to be taught how to breathe.
Mhm.
So that could go on forever. But that would mean that you're constantly either over breathing or under breathing your whole life. And then a chronic degenerative disease comes up. And it's all because your pH count was either too acidic your whole life or too base your whole life. And the people who practice Wim Hof are too base. And they think that Wim Hof is a god, and he doesn't really know anything about breathing because he teaches very, very poor breathing techniques. And he gets it from pranayama anyway, Kalapakti breathing. And the original masters that taught Kalapakti breathing didn't teach people that didn't know how to breathe well or first.
Mm-hmm.
They were already great breathers, and then they adrenalized their nervous system with hyperventilation to possibly attain a higher state of consciousness. But he doesn't know any of that. And that's why people die all the time. There's many people who have died from practicing that technique, especially in water. To me, he's a snake oil salesman because on his last retreat back last February, a 55-year-old woman died during the retreat, and they said she lied on her intake form, that she didn't answer the questions correctly. But of course they're going to, because they've already had many people sue them because you're not supposed to hyperventilate.
Yeah.
In tumo breathing, holotropic breathing, which a lot of people are very fond of too. Now, I know I sound very dogmatic, but I'm trying to make people safe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to create safety. So I do believe that I need to speak like this because it's a public service announcement. So in the book, Inner Bliss of Fire by Lama Yeshe, those monks, before they do tumo breathing, they have to be initiated for 2 to 3 years. They have to be shown that they are a perfect breather before they would hyperventilate. And no one teaches that, right? So I'm a restorative breathing coach. I'm coming at it from a gentle aspect. I'm helping you to retrain your brainstem to restore natural function of respiration. Therefore, you're never going to be in harm's way. I'm never going to do that to somebody. So that's my approach. It's a safe approach, and it's an approach that strengthens the nervous system. And, that's what I care most about, is helping people feel safe.
What would be, I mean, we went through all of these things. We talked about, like, we did that exercise, which I want to go back into here in a second because I'm critical and I want to know more what that means. But we talked about, like, being a bad breather, potentially breathing through your mouth, like not being able to exhale all the way or inhale all the way with a pause. Why would somebody want to improve these things? Like, how would it benefit their life?
Number one, they would sleep better, because sleep is our most critical function. We need to be sleeping well. How many people actually sleep through the night? Not many. And the people that do sleep through the night, some of them can't even get out of bed in the morning. I always throw my wife under the bus because she doesn't practice anything I practice. And she's Japanese, so she loves her rice.
Yeah.
She loves her soy sauce. And when she wakes up in the morning, she can't get out of bed because she's carb loaded. And she's got all this acid in her belly because of all the salt and the rice. So she can't get out of bed. She sleeps too long. And it takes her a while to get going. So that would be one issue. Sleep. And then the other issue is most people are constantly anxious. Almost everybody who has worked with me, one of their issues were that I feel anxious all the time. So anxiety is going to be brought on by either breathing too little, which is not removing enough carbon dioxide, which would be, on the worst scale, would be COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And then if you're breathing too much, like an athlete does, where they're right, or a recreational exerciser thinks when they're working out, the harder they breathe, the better they are. No, they're going to be over breathing their whole life. So when you have a Bolt score that's under 15 seconds and that we would consider critical, that means you're breathing too hard, too fast, and too shallow, even at rest. So if your Bolt is under 15, it means that you're not finding a natural pause at the end of your exhale. So your brain thinks you're in a state of fight or flight, even when you're at rest. So you're not going to feel calm. You're going to have trouble focusing. You're going to have trouble concentrating, and you're going to be triggered by things that shouldn't trigger you. Like, don't sweat the small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people sweat the small stuff, but it's because their breathing is out of whack. They're underperforming when it comes to respiration. So they don't have the ability to have that mechanism in their mind. So Huberman and his colleagues at Stanford, they named it the locus coeruleus.
Mm-hmm.
They found this part of the brain that they named the locus coeruleus, and this little mechanism in your brain spies on your breathing. So when you're breathing calmly and slowly, it relays messages to the midbrain of feelings of safety. But when you're breathing too rapid or too shallow, it's going to relay messages of a fight or flight response. And people are in fight or flight all day when they're at work. Everyone's yelling, whatever, right? But I also work with CEOs, and I have CEOs that work with me during the day. They'll take 30 minutes and I'll do 30-minute sessions with CEOs in the middle of their workday just to calm them down. And they all say thank you at the end. They're like, okay, I feel like I'm reset right now. Because they're talking all day, or they're on their phone, or they're, doing 1,000 things, and they're not thinking about how they're breathing. So they're just defaulting to whatever the mechanism is at the moment. And that's creating a fight or flight paradigm for them.
So that old saying, like whenever you're like, a lot of stuff's coming at you, a lot of information, and it's just like pause, take a breath, execute,
Right.
like make your decision. You would say like great advice, historical advice is there for a reason. Just like make sure it's like like what would that breath be?
Right. That's a great observation and question. I just talked. I cut my mouth closed. I breathed in so I can continue talking. So when they say pause and take a breath, most people go, they inhale, their shoulders lift up, and they think, well, the more air I get in, the more calm I'm going to be. But that's actually adrenaline.
Mm.
Because if you breathe with your shoulders going up, it's an upper chest breath, which is not deep. So the idea in breathing is to breathe slowly through the nose. So let's do another exercise.
Okay.
You can either keep your eyes open or closed on this one. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
But right now, your mouth is closed, but we want to maintain a tongue up on the roof of the mouth posture. And we want to maintain that the teeth stay apart.
Mm.
Now, when I train people, I have them put a stick in between their forefront teeth, because even if your tongue is up, your teeth might touch. And even if they touch a micromillimeter during this exercise, that overrides the other nerves that are devoted to breathing, because the trigeminal nerve takes over when the teeth touch. So I maintain the teeth apart and the tongue up to create this open airway, right? So you could either put your tongue between your teeth, or you can go right now, just to make sure that your tongue is up and your teeth are apart. So now keep your eyes open or closed. And what we want to do is we want to focus on just observing our breath right now. Just observe how you're breathing, right? Now your eyes are open, so you're thinking. So close your eyes and let yourself observe how you're breathing. Don't control it. Don't analyze it. Observe it and just watch it for 4 or 5 breaths. Just watch it. Is it entering low in your belly? And I don't really like belly breathing, but I'm going to use that just for now. Is it entering low, or is it entering high in the upper lungs and chest? So we just want to observe it. Now, as we follow the breathing, we want to maintain that the air is coming through the nose, but not up. Everyone thinks you breathe up, but your sinuses go like this and your trachea goes down. So you don't breathe up, you breathe horizontal. So we want to breathe light and gentle horizontally into the back of the throat. And when you breathe horizontally into the back of the throat, you automatically feel like you're breathing low. You want your diaphragm to open down. And when it opens down, the lower ribs expand and the middle ribs expand, but the breath should not travel up. It looks like it travels up, but it's always going down. And then the ribs expanding makes it looks like it goes up, but it never goes up. It goes down. And I call the anus the South Pole. So as you maintain light breathing, you want to breathe horizontally into your South Pole. And you can even put your hands on your lower ribs, and you want to feel that when you breathe in slowly and gently, that on the inhale, your ribs widen, and on the exhale, your ribs narrow. But you're focusing on feeling the slightly colder air enter your nose and the slightly warmer air leaving your nose. At the top of the inhale, bring a feeling of total relaxation to your body and allow an effortless exhale. So the analogy would be you're standing at the beach, your toes, you're at the water, and your toes are at the end of the wave. And as the wave comes up to your feet, it looks like it stops, but it never stops. It pauses. And that pause is the transition between the inhale and the exhale. So at the top of the inhale, there should be a gentle pause, not a stopping, not a bracing, not a guarding, but a pausing sensation so you can transition and allow the air to leave your body effortlessly. And as the air leaves your body effortlessly, you also want to try to find a natural pausing sensation at the bottom of the exhale. So this is dimension number 1 of breathing. It's breathing light to breathe right. So we maintain light, gentle, slow inhales, but not really even more than 3 seconds. But not everybody could do that. We would have to assess somebody's breath. Chase, I know we're in the middle of the podcast, but I don't know if you know this. I'm mostly a fruitarian. I've had a lot of watermelon today. Can we take a break?
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Let's
have to
pause.
go pee. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I'm not a full-on fruitarian, but
No,
close.
that's something we can definitely talk about. But that exercise, like as soon as I started breathing, closed my eyes, I realized I was very, very much breathing in the top of my chest, like very much so. And then as soon as you said like focus on breathing like horizontally and versus vertically, like that's a conscious switch that you can make. Like, and as soon as you said that, like you're exactly right. I was breathing more into my stomach, into my diaphragm, and you can feel it. Like you can feel the air going up versus going back, which was very interesting.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, just a tiny little switch, right? And that's what I mean. Why, you learned how to brush your teeth by watching your parents. You learned how to comb your hair by watching your parents. So breathing needs to be shown to people too.
Absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for sleep. I always have been. I found out at a very young age that like a lack of sleep affected me more than my peers. Like it seemed to
Right.
be more sluggish, more
Wow.
just it affected me in every way. So I've been a big proponent of sleep. Some of the things that I do, I have a cool room. I have a nice bed. I have a sleep mask. I wear my blue light blocking glasses. I have an 8 sleep to regulate my temperature. Love it.
I didn't want to wear them today, but
But something I used to do and then recently started doing again within the past, probably I'd say 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, is mouth taping. So I'll mouth
nice.
tape it before I go to bed. And the 8 sleep, it tracks probably not as accurately as like a Whoop or an Oura ring, but it'll track your HRV, your breath rate, your heart rate, things like that. And it's since I've started taping, and it could be in correlation to because I'm also doing a lot of zone 2 and aerobic training that I had stopped doing, but my HRV is going up quite a bit more, almost significant, like almost like immediately when I started putting on my mouth tape, like you can see an increase in HRV, a decrease in heart rate, and a decrease in breath rate. And so are you a proponent? Like, do you advocate towards mouth taping?
Yes. It all depends on the person. I mouth tape because I've had a lot of teeth pulled. I had bad teeth from a child. My jaw used to be much wider. It got more narrow. I never should have let them take out my wisdom teeth, but I didn't know about that like 18 years ago because that's how long ago it was. And that screwed up my jaw. And when they took out those teeth, it made my jaw more narrow, which means that your tongue won't stay up. It falls in the back of your mouth and your tongue can get in the way of your airway. So I use mouth tape. I use myo tape. I don't tape my lips. I used to, but when I started my 12-month practicum with Lois, because I went really deep for a year in the brain, she said, you can't fully tape your lips because your trigeminal nerve is this massive nerve. It's the largest one. It's like Jupiter compared to all the other nerves are like Mercury compared to Jupiter. And if you cover your lips, there's a branch of the trigeminal nerve, the mental nerve, that if you cover it, your brain will never do it, never keep your lips closed on its own because you're activating this nerve, and that's not a good thing. But if you put the tape around the lips, now you're getting, so trigeminal nerve dimension branch 1 is up here. Branch 2 is from here to here. So this is dimension 2. And dimension 3 is from the crook of the lips down. So if we put the tape around the lips, we stimulate both branches of the cranial nerves, and then the brain will tell the lips to keep them together naturally. That is, though, if you don't have a recessed jaw. I find that I have to use it. I've been using mouth tape now for 7 years. If I lie on my back and I don't have the tape on, I'm going to open my mouth and snore. And then when I first started mouth taping, I was still snoring, but it was a nose snore. You can nose snore too. And if you nose snore, that's because the cranial nerves don't have enough energy to keep the back of the nose open. So people will nose snore. So there's so many different little nuances to this. But I do believe in mouth tape. I think everybody should try it because most people are waking up with a dry mouth. So for the listeners, if you wake up in the morning and you have a dry mouth, the chances are very high that you were mouth breathing when you were sleeping. If you can't get out of bed in the morning, whether you slept 9 or 10 hours, the chances are very high that you were mouth breathing. And if you don't sleep enough and you wake up multiple times a night, there is a high chance that you've been mouth breathing. And now the reason your HRV went up is because the nose is designed to limit how much air that comes in to slow down the flow rate. So then the brain has to match the flow rate of the air, and that calms the system down. So when you breathe out and in through your nose, you're retaining carbon dioxide, but not too much, the right balance of pressure regulated by your brain. And then if you're regulating pressure well, then your HRV is going to go up because the brain is sensing that it feels safe. It feels calm. And then love comes into the equation. When you feel safe and you feel calm, you start to notice that you feel good all day long. And you're like, wow. And now people that come into your view or the cashier who threw the money at you, you're like, oh, she must be having a bad day. That's what we talked about earlier is you don't feel triggered anymore.
Yeah, I'm definitely, so in my position, I just use the brand. I think it's called like hostage tape. Been using it for a while. Interesting name.
I started with, I know.
Very, very sticky, like hardcore sticky. Like I have a mustache, so I actually have to put it on my hand first to reduce some of the stickiness and then put it on my mouth. But it doesn't come off. It stays on fully all through the night. My wife says I snore sometimes.
So you're no snoring if you have the tape
she
on.
definitely said I snored before I mouth taped, and then I put the mouth tape on. And I'm like, I don't snore anymore. She's like, yeah, you still do snore sometimes. Would that be the nose snoring? Yes. Would that be something that'll go away with time, like strengthening a muscle? It just needs to be done.
It will go away because mine went away.
Okay.
I don't nose snore anymore. So yes, it will go away. But you can also notice that if you eat a high grain diet, that you're going to be congested, and that's going to make you snore as well.
Okay.
So grains are going to really, legumes, all the things that turn to acid in your belly, that's going to make you snore.
Well, I don't
close
eat
down
any of
your
those.
airway.
And I know you said you're fruitarian.
No, 95%.
Okay.
So I'm a raw vegan, but I'm not full on fruitarian.
Okay. Well, to go the other way, because it's funny that I have you here today. I'm speaking with Dr. Anthony Chafee tomorrow. He's a big proponent of the carnivore diet. So he talks all carnivore. He's been doing it for 9 years, I think 8 years. I kind of fall in what I found over the past year or so that my diet has kind of filtered into, I eat animal proteins, like a lot of red meat in terms of just like grass fed, but then all my carbs come from fruit and dates.
So like
And
Dr. Saladino, that's what he says.
I would kind of follow into his diet, if you will, animal based, whatever you want to call it. I feel good that way. I've kind of felt. Would you say like, what would you say would be the optimal diet and why for breathing? Because like you said, Joy was like a raw fruitarian or vegan for a long time. You are as well. Is that? Do you find like that's because of health benefits, or is that for ethical or moral reasons?
It started for me as I gave up flesh 13 years ago, so I haven't eaten flesh in 13 years. And you could see I got a lot of muscle on my body. You know, meat proteins from meat does not build muscle. That's ridiculous. Calories build muscle. Doesn't matter where they come from. Because in 2016, the American weightlifting record holder was full on vegan. And he set the American record. And he's still vegan to this day. And he's a big dude and very strong. So you don't need meat to build muscle. That's ridiculous. None of the animals do that. And the carnivores who eat meat, they sleep all day. And they sleep all day because it's very hard to digest, because proteins have to be broken down. And once you ingest protein, your body can't break protein down and then make protein from that. Everyone's like, well, there are amino acids in there. Well, amino acids are found in everything. And every food on the planet besides fruit actually steals enzymes from your body, because your body can't digest food without enzymes. But there's only one food source on the planet that has matching enzymes for all the human organs, and that's fruits. So every single fruit has an enzyme that matches your pancreas, your liver, your heart, your lungs, and the fruit sugar doesn't require any insulin to be absorbed through the cell wall. So no insulin. So you might eat watermelon right now and your blood sugar would spike, but in 10 minutes it would come back down. Because I've had my blood tested and my sugars are normal. And my protein levels are just where they need to be. I mean, I also take marine phytoplankton because I believe that that's a superfood. It's the superfood that created all of life on Earth, and it has all the essential building blocks of life. So I'll eat marine phytoplankton to give me all of my essential fats, all of my essential amino acids, so then my body is making natural proteins. My body's actually making the protein to sustain me and not saying I need to get it from the outside. And fruit also has phytonutrients, and it's got structured water. So if you eat anything other than fruit, you're dehydrated, because your body needs water to digest the food. And you can't drink water because that's H2O. And the water that's found within your fascial tissue is H3O. That's structured water. So what do you think fruit has? H2O or 3O?
3O.
3O, right? So you're hydrated at the cellular level, whereas no other food could do that. Now, however, I have athletes that I work with, and they don't want to be fruitarian. And if you're an athlete that's in an aggressive sport, well, you need to eat meat. You need to eat blood because it makes you aggressive. But do I think it's good for them? Absolutely not. Because the proteins are essentially burning you from the inside out. And, you're young. I don't know how old the guy you're talking about is, but, living to your 90 is not a good life. It's not old. Even Weston Price, they're like, well, they lived to 100 and they were meat eaters. Well, yeah, they lived off the land and they were eating pretty well and taking care of themselves and hunter-gatherers, but they still only lived to 100. The human body can live infinitely. A cell, Dr. Lipton, Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton, he proved that in a lab with the right medium, the cells can live forever. The only reason a cell dies is through oxidation. and oxidation is caused by acidosis. So there's only one disease on the planet, and it's acidosis, which causes inflammation, which then causes a doctor to come in and say, "Oh, I have a specialty. I'm a lymphatic, whatever, a leukemia specialist." But they're never going to address the issue, which is acidosis. How do I remove the acids from the interstitial spaces so they don't burn my tissues and cause the inflammation and the corrosion? So I believe that meat corrodes you. And you also, if you're going to eat meat, you got to eat it solo. You show me one carnivore that eats anything other than meat, unless they're starving to death. And they're not going to be eating a carcass and then go eat some grass.
Yeah.
They eat one food at a time, every animal. The only species in the world that doesn't eat their species-specific diet is humans. And I think that humans are frugivores, because if I dropped you in the woods butt naked, you would die. Yeah, if you knew how to make a trap, fine, but that's your brain. Your body doesn't have anything on it. You can't tackle an animal and bite into its hide, not even a bunny rabbit. You can't catch a bunny rabbit, and you can't bite into it. You have to deskin it. But carnivores can bite into these things. You don't have the teeth to do it, and you don't have anything on your body to do it. So we didn't evolve as meat eaters, we adapted. Because when we were Pangea and we were in a tropical climate, we were eating fruits, because fruits were the first thing grown after the flowers. And they were succulent and vibrant, and they were fibrous, and you had to bite into them, and you had to use your teeth to bite into the skins and all that. They weren't like the fruits we have today, soft for everybody. Every fruit is a hybrid. None of the fruits are natural. So we developed a bigger brain because we were fruit eaters. There's a fabulous book called Return to the Brain of Eden. So I want to suppress my testosterone. I don't want a high testosterone count. I want it to be high, but I don't want my free testosterone to be high. I want my free testosterone to be bound so I'm not aggressive, so my brain continues to grow and heal itself for the rest of its life. So I don't believe in any of that. But I was on that side. I was a wrestler. I ate 150 grams of protein a day. And then 8 years ago, my acupuncturist said, listen to my pulse. And she said to me, in the first 5 minutes of my first session, she said, Bryan, guys like you have a heart attack in your 60s and die. And I was like, what? Look at me. I'm in amazing shape. She's like, that doesn't mean anything. And I was like, what do you mean? And then, I listened to her. When I finally went raw, which was 6 years ago, I actually reversed all of that damage. It took me a year. And then my acupuncturist, which was a different one, he said to me, what you've done with your body is nothing short of remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. I didn't know it was possible, and I'm learning from you. He's like, I know I told you don't do this diet, that it wouldn't be good for you, but you come here every week and you're getting better and better every week, and you're eating nothing but fruit and salads. So, and phytoplankton. Because he would always be like, you have to get your protein in. I was like, Dr. Ming, I don't eat protein.
Yeah.
I take marine phytoplankton.
I know you made you brought attention to like carnivores only eating like meat. They don't eat. What about like when you said that, I immediately thought of like a bear. Like they'll eat meat and then they're known for berries. They're known for honey as well.
Yeah, they do forage. Yeah, they do, but they're eating what's given to them.
Okay.
Right? They're taking what they can. I'm sure that when they're foraging, it's because there's not enough meat available. I would bet my life that when they go to those sources, it's because they can't find meat in the moment. That's what I would think, but I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
I have no
Yeah.
studies.
No. I don't expect you to be an expert on
Yeah.
bears, but just so I'm somebody. I do eat a lot of protein. Like coming from, I'm to get back to the Bolt test here in a second, but like coming from like I've always done sport, from football to weightlifting to CrossFit. So I've been like at my fighting weight when I was competing, I weighed 200, 205. So I'd be eating upwards of like 220, 225 grams of protein a day. Even now I'm probably close to 200. I eat a decent amount of protein. And so your argument, and like, you're exactly right. Like, it doesn't, we're just getting amino acids and calories to build our muscle. But you would argue that like you don't need that protein. So if somebody was going into building muscle, into weightlifting, you think like that could be achieved just as well from just fruit?
Yeah, well, type in 2016 American weightlifting record holder. I forgot his name.
Yeah.
And that's the proof.
Okay. But but he's probably supplementing with some degree of like a pea protein or something.
Probably, but I don't know.
Okay.
That would probably be a good guess,
Yeah.
but I don't know that. And I don't take any of that stuff. I'm fully against all that too.
Okay.
I don't put anything in my body other than food and phytoplankton.
Could the argument be made that we didn't evolve or eat fruit because you have to supplement with the phytoplankton? Like we can't get like those fat soluble vitamins as easily?
Well, if we were living on the earth, we would have been eating fruit and herbs have all of that.
Okay.
So the herbs, I mean, I'm not into religion, but even in the Bible, they say, God gave you all the fruit bearing seeds and herbs on the planet for you. So it didn't say anything about going and killing, having dominion over the world didn't mean you could do what you wanted. We were supposed to be the protectors. That's what dominion means. Not that we can go and, I mean, for me too, it's ethical. I would never cause harm. There is no ethical killing. You can't kill an animal ethically because at the moment of their death, their cortisol and adrenaline is through the roof, and that's what you're ingesting, which is kind of why I tell athletes to do it because they need to be aggressive. So I'm like, you probably need blood in your diet.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. You have to have that aggressiveness. You have to be able to flip that switch at times. To go back to that bolt score, you mentioned like I could have been overbreathing. Coming from the sport of CrossFit, I mean, one of the tenets of CrossFit is like intensity over volume. Like you don't need to be doing a lot until you can do very little, very, very high intensity, very, very well, because that breeds adaptation from the ideology of Greg Glassman, the creator of CrossFit at that time. And so when I'm training 4, 5, 6 hours a day, like all of my training is at a very high volume. Like I do 2-3 hour sessions. Obviously, I'm not doing actively working out the whole time. Like there's strength pieces, long, zone 2 pieces, intensity pieces, gymnastics pieces. You're just trying to develop it all. But a lot of my training is done at a very high intensity. So I am breathing very hard. And do you think that is what would play a big impact on my bolt score there?
Yeah, of course, because you're over breathing all the time and everything that I used to be a power lifter. After my wrestling career ended at 26, I got into powerlifting and I squatted 622 pounds at 165 pounds and I never took drugs to do it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, but everything you do is, and you Valsalva, what do you think your blood pressure is doing? What do you think your blood pressure is doing all day long when you're in your training? What's your blood pressure? Do you know?
I don't know.
How old are you?
28.
Oh, you're young. So you can get away with it now, but that's why athletes don't live as long as normal people because they've been overtrained their whole life. So this is what I do for a living. I help athletes protect their nervous system. And one of my students is on the Washington Capitals. He plays defense. So he was on the ice last night when Alexander Ovechkin broke the record.
Amazing.
And I started working with him 2 seasons ago. And he had been in the league for 7 years. And he had never made more than 63 out of 82 games. Every year he was having catastrophic injuries. Well, last year he played in all 82 games when he was with the Senators. That was before I started training him for that season. And then this year he's played in every game but 4. And now he just signed a $72 million contract because he's durable. Because he's the best in shape guy on the ice. Watch Jacob Chikrin play. Watch how he skates, even in the third period, and he doesn't look like he's tired. Right? But he eats meat. He follows the Saladino diet, and he doesn't eat anything with meat. Right? He eats it on meat on an empty stomach and not with any starches. So, but he can breathe and he can recover. A game shouldn't be that hard. Now, CrossFit, it's different because you're actually trying to kill it's like who can kill themselves the best. Right? I mean, to me, it's not a sport, but
it's the ability to suffer. I mean, that's all it is.
Exactly. And I would never want to do that thank God they didn't have it when I was
Yeah.
26, because I would have been doing it.
Yeah. Hey, I'm out of it. Yeah, but you're exactly right. It is the ability to suffer.
Yeah. Yeah. There's
Okay.
nothing good about it for your body.
I mean, yeah. Once you go to the highest end of any kind of, whether that be bodybuilding or hockey or football or whatever, like once you go into sport, it stops becoming healthy and starts
Of
becoming
course.
a competition, which
Of
is
course.
not healthy.
Every time you experience pain, you're not in a good place. Your brain doesn't want to experience pain.
What would you say would be the number one thing that people should start doing to start getting the benefits from breath?
Command breathing through your nose at all times, except when you're eating and talking. So focus on nose breathing all the time, especially during exercise. It roughly takes about 4 months to be able to become a nose breather during exercise. It took me 8 months.
Mm.
That's how badly I was breathing, because I was a bent over athlete. I was powerlifting, and I destroyed my nervous system. Right, I compressed my spine. In wrestling, you give yourself scoliosis. You actually give yourself scoliosis because your fascia gets molded into the position that you spend most of your time in. So that corrupted my breathing mechanics. Um, and why did I say that? What was the point of the beginning of that story?
What the question was, what would the number one thing be? And you said control your nose breathing.
Yeah. So, oh yeah. So when you're exercising, and people are not going to want to do this, I did. I took a step back because I was told I was dying. So every single workout I would do, as soon as I felt like I had to open my mouth, I would just stop the set. I'm not trying to get to any rep or anything. If I can't keep my mouth closed, I stop or I slow down and I recover till I can start to work harder again. And the idea is like with my swimmer who just broke his 200-meter freestyle time. And what I'm getting him to do is hold his breath and breathe slower all the time. And he's excelling in just 4 short months. Right. So if you're well trained, it really should only take about 4 months to perfect yourself to breathe through your nose at all times. Now, if you were running a sprint all out, you should still be able to breathe through your nose. But if you're in a MMA fight or you're doing CrossFit, you're probably not going to be able to ever breathe through your nose the whole time, because you're always pushing yourself to the limit. Now, Izzy did it. He was pushing himself to the limit in the fights. So maybe it can be done. I don't know, Chase. I only know one athlete that did it, and that's Izzy.
Mm-hmm.
And he proved it. And Joe Rogan even said, they never talk about an athlete's breathing. And then I remember, because I was watching all the fights, I loved Izzy. And Joe Rogan was like, he hasn't opened his mouth once the whole fight. And that's why they called him a wizard, because he would just be like, he was always in control. He was always calm, right? Even when you're getting hit, you're supposed to be calm. And in hockey too. So I train another retired New Jersey Devil, Travis Zajac, and his skating coach was Adam Oates, who's in the Hall of Fame. And he's like, Bryan, everything you're teaching me, I heard already, but from a different perspective. And Coach Oates used to tell us, when you're getting hit on the boards, that you should not hold your breath. You should not go and hypertense and brace yourself. And I say this all the time. You need to continuously breathe. So he would tell them, breathe out, let the hit take you off the board so you stay loose, not rigid. So Travis is like, this is exactly what Oates was teaching me, but not from a breathing perspective. So I'm like, well, that's good to know that a Hall of Famer shares that type of idea. And it's just, look, we could make superhuman athletes, and breathing will become mainstream. It's getting there. It's definitely getting there, because more and more athletes are going to tell more and more athletes, but most athletes don't want to talk about it because they feel like it's not cool, or they don't want their competition to know.
True.
Because it's a superpower. Right? The cheetah is getting to 60 miles an hour, not mouth breathing. And the horse doesn't even know how to mouth breathe. And they're the best athletes on the planet.
you want to bring some degree of adaptation, let's say hypertrophy for the sake of muscle, you have to go to a degree of intensity and failure. Like if you,
I don't believe so.
okay.
I don't think that's true, because if I didn't do those last 2 forced reps that, number one, are destroying my nervous system, because your nervous system is not saying, oh, this feels good.
Mm-hmm.
So right there, that there's a disconnect in the human that wants to do that. I was that human. That's the only reason I can say it like this on the podcast,
Mhm.
because that was me. So I know what it's like to do that. So when you're pushing yourself, if you stopped the 2 reps sooner, and then in your next workout tried to get just 1 more rep, but then stop before those forced reps, you would still get strong and get hypertrophy. You don't have to go into that lactate state that's adrenalized to get that hypertrophy, because first of all, is your nervous system recovering from that? No. That's why everybody plateaus. Everybody's plateauing at some point, because you're destroying your nervous system. And I always say that destroying, because it is destroying your nervous system.
My
Otherwise,
wife,
your bolt score would be, everyone would have a minute bolt score. And I don't
yeah,
mean you, I meant you,
yeah, I get
everybody.
you. My wife is a first year MD PhD student, so she's medical school. We're here at CU,
Good.
so she's going to a really good medical school. Is this breathing, the cranial nerve, stuff like that? Something, is that something that she will learn?
No.
Why do you think that is?
I worked with a girl from Harvard once. She was in one of my classes. And she said, Bryan, we just had pulmonology for 3 weeks, and they didn't talk about nose breathing.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even talk about nose breathing. They were like, breathe in your nose, breathe out your mouth. It doesn't matter how you breathe, you're breathing. And I was like, Harvard? And she said, why do you think that is? I said, I don't know. They didn't even know what the Bohr law was. She wasn't even taught the Bohr law. So the Bolt score is your level of breathlessness. And the Bohr law is the physiological law of cellular respiration. It was originated in 1904 by Christian Bohr's, Niels Bohr's father. So Niels Bohr won the Quantum Nobel Prize in 1919, and in 1904, his dad created a law of cellular respiration, which people don't know. So you have a cell, everybody knows that inside a red blood cell carries oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So they think, oh, the oxygen's just moseying on along in the red blood cell. But no, oxygen needs a carrier inside the cell. And that carrier is called hemoglobin, which is a protein. And hemoglobin has a heavy iron atom. So the oxygen, when it gets absorbed through the membrane, is attracted to the iron atom. And the hemoglobin content is called hematocrit, which is what they test every year for your physical. So if you have a high hematocrit level, that means you have more oxygen carrying capacity, but it doesn't mean you're utilizing oxygen the way you should be. And the Bohr law states that in order for hemoglobin and oxygen to dissociate, so the scientific term is called the oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, called the Bohr law, because he created that or originated it. So hemoglobin, oxygen, there's 4 of them inside the red blood cell. How do we get them to dissociate? We need carbon dioxide to do that. Carbon dioxide is the most important gas that your body makes. Carbon dioxide is produced by every cell and every tissue in your body, and it's 100 times more important than oxygen is. Because if you don't have the right levels of CO2, the oxygen that's bound to the hemoglobin doesn't get unbound. And if it's not unbound, it can't get to the parts of the body that need it. How do we unbind it? Carbon dioxide. So hemoglobin, oxygen, inside a red blood cell. Carbon dioxide's a gasotransmitter. It comes through the membrane of the cell. It walks right through the membrane, and it signals hemoglobin. It signals hemoglobin to release oxygen. Now, when you inhale, oxygen gets absorbed and it gets bound. So just because you're inhaling a lot of air doesn't mean you're getting oxygen in. That's another thing. People say, take a deep breath, get more air in your body. That's what Wim Hof says. That's not true. It's not true. It's not even close to true.
I do remember James Nestor talking about that in breath. Like as
Yeah.
the CO2 levels went up to a certain degree, they were actually more oxygenated, which was
Yeah.
interesting.
The CO2 signals the hemoglobin to dissociate. Now oxygen can be utilized. Now it's free in the bloodstream. And then the body is only going to direct that oxygen molecule to a cell that needs it, not one that doesn't need it. So that's the important part. So your ECO2, END, tidal carbon dioxide levels, it's ECO2. So that's how much CO2 is left in your blood at the end of a passive exhale. If you're under a 15-second Bolt score, you're going to be very, very low. So medical textbooks at Harvard or your wife's school, I guarantee you that if you asked her, honey, can you find out what they consider normal carbon dioxide levels in the blood? She's going to come back to you and she's going to say 32 to 37 millimeters of mercury pressure. And I'm going to say that that's wrong because 32 to 35 is below average. Under 32 and you're dying.
Mhm.
You're slowly dying. 32 to 35, you're below average and you're slowly dying because you're not getting oxygen. You're not getting release of oxygen to give your cells the mitochondria the energy they need. So 35 to 37 is average. Now, I was working on my breath for 5 years doing the oxygen advantage exercises. And then in the beginning of 2024, I did a year-long program with Lois Laney, who's regarded as a god in neurology. And that's where I got my brain stuff from. And she put me on a $9,000 carbon dioxide machine that I'm sure Anders and James did when they did these tests. So when I was breathing out, I couldn't see the machine. She said to me, so you know carbon dioxide. What do you think your level is? And what do you think is good? So I told her what I thought. So I said 37 to 40 would be good, and 40 to 44 would be excellent. And she said, great. What do you think you're at? So I went 38.5. I figured I had to be a little bit over 37.
Mhm.
I trained breath holds for 5 years. She turns me around and I look at the screen and it says 30, 34 to 35. And I was like, oh, what the hell? And you know what? I still wasn't sleeping well. All training my breath never made me a better sleeper. And I still had joint pain because my ECO2 levels were below average. So even though I was holding my breath and in breathing, we're taught that if you hold your breath, you release oxygen, you can increase all these numbers, but not if the brain can't regulate pressure. So that ECO2 level is controlled by cranial nerve number 9, which is the glossopharyngeal nerve. It's our lifeline. So even though I was training my breath, because as a wrestler, I'm dedicated. So I was training my breath 6 days a week and my numbers were terrible. And I was distraught. And I was like, what? She goes, don't get upset. Think of it as an opportunity to expand. So 9 months went by and I did all of the brain activations. And I had to go to Phoenix 5 times to learn 3-day seminars each weekend. And then we were doing stuff online too. So 9 months later, I went on the machine because we also did personal sessions with her, and I was at 40. And I was like, yes! But I was also noticing that I was sleeping better, and the level of discomfort I had in my joints were also dissipating because now my body is more oxygenated. Mm-hmm. Right? Everybody had a pulse ox during COVID. And everyone who thinks they're 99 would go, yeah, I'm 99% saturated with oxygen. Yeah. Again, they know this, but they allowed wrong information to be trickled down to humanity, which is a travesty. It's diabolical what they did during COVID. Because if you're 99% saturated with oxygen, you're not oxygenated, you're bound. That means that 99% of all the oxygen molecules in your body are bound to hemoglobin inside the red blood cell. And if your ECO2 levels are where they need to be, which is 40 to 40 or 37 to 44, then your oxygen level should be like 96.5 to 98.5, which means if you go from 99 down to 98, people will think, well, it's less. How could less be better? No, it means that you got an extra 1% to be soluble, to be free. And now everyone in the world thinks that they need to have a lot of oxygen. And they were taught a lie. They were literally taught a lie. It's horrific what happened.
That is, yeah, it is a backwards way of thinking about oxygen and about breath and about performance. You always think like, okay, I need to reduce the CO2 and increase the O2, increase the oxygen. But
it's backwards.
I mean,
it's being taught in reverse of the physiological law.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, forget me. My teacher, Patrick McCune, who wrote the book Oxygen Advantage, Lois, the guy who won the Nobel Prize for it, the guy who was awarded a physiological law, who got a law named after him. That can't be debated or debunked. Once it's a law, that's it. And they're going against the law. I mean, that's really weird, right?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely.
And all your listeners, it's good that they're hearing this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bryan, I really appreciate your time today. It was a pleasure getting to talk to you and following you on Instagram. Would you mind real quick just share with the people where they can find you? What are you doing?
Lovely. Thank you. It's been a pleasure being with you too. I didn't realize, man, it's almost 90 minutes. Wow.
Time flew by.
So my Instagram channel is breath_verse, like universe, breath_verse. And on my link tree, you can get right to my website. I have a breathing community, but I also teach movement. I've been a personal trainer for 35 years. I'm a WEC method coach and a GOTA coach. So I teach people how to work on their brain, their breathing, and regular natural movement. It's all about natural ability. And my platform is my website's quantumfitness.org. You can go there, or you can go to my link tree. And then I have a community, and I have 8 programs that are video instruction. And my website membership is $33 because I wanted to make it affordable for 1 million people. You know, most people are charging a lot. If I do in-person stuff, yeah, I charge what I'm worth. But for my community, I wanted it to be cheap.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can make it 55, make a little bit more money, but no, I'm actually going to keep it at 33 because it's a master number. And I want millions of people to be able to come on and get good information.
Mm-hmm.
And the programs I have on there will teach people how to breathe. One's called free and easy breathing, right? Breathing should be free. I shouldn't even be charging for breathing, but that's what this life is. But we should all be. So I try to give away as much as I can on my Instagram channel and in these programs. And then I have a 6-month program on there. So you can learn baseline breathing, and then the program will take you through 6 months, tell you exactly what to do every single day for 6 months, and how you can get from having a critical Bolt score to an excellent Bolt score. And I have a private group with that. So it's on Telegram. So people, once they join the platform, now they can ask me questions in real time, and I answer everybody's questions. I have a couple of moderators, but it's really just me. I do most of the answering. Mm-hmm. And so I can coach people for $33 a month, but it's through a chat.
Yeah. Well, Bryan, I have a tradition on this podcast where I ask the guest who would be the person, assuming they're alive and well, that you'd be most interested in hearing on a podcast. And if I get them on, I'll of course let them know that I got the inspiration from you. But who would that person be?
Well, it would be the Buddha, but he's transitioned.
Yeah.
So I would say Lois Laney, okay. my teacher.
Lois Laney.
LAYNEE, and it's restoringbreathing.com.
Okay. I'll look her up.
Yeah, she's the person you want to have on.
Well, Bryan, this was a pleasure. I learned a lot. I'm excited to try to improve my breathing. I'm going to definitely look up your memberships, and I'm going to definitely start implementing my nasal breathing to more of a rigid degree in my zone 2 and in my training, and try and increase that Bolt score. So when we do this again, hopefully I can be out of the critical and into something a little bit better.
Well, when you join the platform, I'll do a complimentary session for you.
Oh, amazing. I would love that. That'd be very interesting.
Yeah, and then you can, it'll give you some feedback. You could tell people about it. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Bryan, thank you again. Can't wait to do this again.
Thank you for listening to the Chase Merrill podcast.